SpotlightMediaStudios.com. Welcome to Education Unfiltered. Here is Mary Stucco.
Hello, this is Mary Stucco with Education Unfiltered, where we talk all things higher ed at all different levels. And today I'm super excited to introduce Tim Broxholm. And he's the author of Connect Master with McGraw for Introduction to Business. And I got to meet Tim several weeks ago in Phoenix at a conference. And he's just a really interesting, brilliant guy. And I wanted to bring him on. So welcome, Tim.
Hey, Mary, thank you so much. It's great to talk with you again.
Great to talk to you. So tell me a little bit about your story. I know you're an author now, you're working with McGraw, but you also have a lot of different interesting background, different types of jobs that you do. Can you share some of that kind of from the beginning and how you got to where you're at?
Sure. I think I've always had a fascination with people and leadership and how do we help people get to be their best. And that really has been with me my whole life. And maybe that has something to do with just me wanting to learn that about myself as well. Mm-hmm. But my undergraduate, I studied business at the University of Portland. I also minored in psychology. And I think I started to see how those two interrelate. And really, if you think about business in itself, you really can't do anything without people. You can't create strategy without people. You can't execute without people. You can't innovate without people. And so, people are at the heart of everything we do. And really just wanting to understand that, I got into HR and worked in human resources for the first part of my career. And then I started studying industrial organizational psychology, and that's what I got my master's in, and really found a sweet spot there. And wanting to do more work with different types of businesses, I moved into management consulting and led a team, got to work with some really cool companies. And then I found this place called the Classroom, and it really was kind of a spot where it was my vocation and I just felt at home. Mm-hmm. And that turned itself into a tenure track opportunity where I started to build programs for community colleges and moving them from a 2-year to 4-year programs where students could get a career technical education in business and then continue on with us at the college and pursue topics and subjects that were really ripe for more opportunity in the future. So we looked at marketing and entrepreneurship first and then management, and really being able to deliver an affordable, quality education that was accessible to a wide array of students was something that I was just super passionate about. And along that journey, the tools that I was using, the technology and the different formats and modalities and just trying to deliver content and learning experiences in a different way. McGraw-Hill found me, and they said, hey, would you be interested in creating a new product to replace the textbook, a digital-first product? I said, yeah, I'm all in. So started to do that. It was a long journey because we went from being a publishing company to a learning science company and integrating technology in there. And that, as you can imagine, is like shifting a big, cruise liner in that's been, when the company's been doing publishing for 100 years. And but it was exciting. It was an opportunity to innovate and bring that to market. And at that point is when the pandemic started, and I really have seen a massive shift in the way the world of work is looking at skills and abilities and competencies, and to really help people, I wanted to get back into that. And so I made what I call a pit stop at Amazon and worked in global talent management with them, and then joined Microsoft. And so I work at Microsoft and I continue to teach, and I work in talent management there with our consumer marketing, our gaming, and our strategic business development organizations. And then I teach probably 2 to 3 classes a quarter at Green River College as an adjunct now.
So you keep really busy, plus you have a family on top of it. So
I do. I have 2 little boys. I have Raymond, who's 3. And as I share with folks, our life got turned upside down this last year when he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So we've been adjusting to that.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have a 1-year-old, Joey. And so they keep us super busy.
Yeah, especially little boys. Boy, they just don't stop. So
they do not. They do not.
I love that you brought up, how you had, a degree or a minor in psychology, because I always encourage my students to take at least one psychology class, because it doesn't matter what you're doing. In some level, you're dealing with people. And I have to say, I was not a psychology major, but when I was taking my undergrad at Michigan State, I did take a criminal psychology class. And as weird as that says, that was like one of the most helpful classes I ever took. And I've carried so much of that into my life in the business world. And a lot of it's like kind of dealing with deviant behavior, and it's not necessarily criminal behavior, but it's just how do you effectively work with people who, maybe don't think like you or are expressing some deviant behaviors of some sort. And so, it is really interesting you say that, because I'm a big believer in having at least one psych class under your belt just to kind of help you along.
Yeah, one thing that I think we're recognizing more and more, and we talked about this at our conference a couple weeks ago, was that these set of skills that as students are coming out that they really need is more than just what we're delivering in the classroom on marketing and HR and operations and accounting and finance. Like, having an awareness of those things is really important, and that's the function of your job. But what we really are starting to see more and more is a demand for the interpersonal, or what I call the success skills. And, this is the leadership and the teamwork and the critical thinking and being able to look at things from diverse perspectives and problem solve and work with people and all those, critical factors. I've been pondering a lot. My dad worked in retail for probably 30 years, and one of the things is, and he didn't have a higher education or anything like that, but he was so good with people and customers. And I ache for that time where that was such a great skill set to have, and you could build success upon that. And I think we need to get more of those skills into the classroom and into our campuses as I look at kind of what are employers looking for in that next generation of employees and their current employees too.
You're absolutely right, because we have advisory board at the college I work with, and, people who are in the business community, business owners, and that's exactly what they're saying to us too, is that you all need to work with them. And, I know at that symposium we were talking about, the word soft skill came up, and you're like, no, it's way beyond soft skills.
Yeah, it's not very soft, I think for a lot of us, it can be some of the most challenging work we do, and what we seek out executive coaching for, and we bring in facilitators and consultants and guys like me to come in and help people with these things, because they're so, mission critical, especially as, our workforce gets more dispersed geographically, and the complexity of the tasks we're doing are crossing boundaries and functions. Like, it just becomes that much more mission critical,
Yeah. So, you're obviously very immersed in this. This is kind of like front of mind for you. So, and obviously, teaching business classes and all that, which, we both do, we're seeing, I really enjoy teaching business right now, because every week there's something new to talk about and explore. And it's constantly moving and shifting, and some of it's good and some of it's not so good. But what are you seeing? Because we're still just coming out of it. There's a lot of shifting still going on. Some of the biggest concerns or changes that you've noticed kind of entering into this whole new workspace that we're going into now?
Well, I think that we're in a space where every organization, and even within the functions and the job roles, are going to have to kind of figure out what does work look like for them. And, at Microsoft, we've got hybrid, and I would encourage your listeners to go check out some of the reports and surveys that we've done and listen to our podcast over there. It's really great. We talked to some wonderful people about, people are way smarter than me about kind of what some of this looks like. And there's not a correct answer. I think that we have to start thinking about, what makes sense for people. And what people want right now is they want that autonomy, to work in hours and places and with people that work for them, and engage them. And then, but that's the other part of this all or nothing around remote or not remote. I think that's a fallacy. I would say that, what the data really is showing is that it's a need for connection and people want that, but they don't want to go in just to connect or just to work. It's got to be very kind of intentional and purposeful. And so companies are going to have to figure that out. And that's not something I don't think they've had to think about before, really, as part of their people strategy and their talent strategy. But, you see this great, I don't call it the great resignation, I call it the great talent migration. You see folks going to different places to try to figure that out for themselves. Like, will this culture be better for me? Will this work for my family more? Does the compensation line up with what our needs are, and all those different types of things.
Yeah, and it is. It's really fascinating, how all these polls I'm seeing and information coming back is that a lot of people really do not want to be back in an office setting 100% any longer.
Right.
I think a majority kind of want a mix. And I think that's really interesting because I didn't quite expect that. I thought there'd be more people wanting to go back into the office and kind of pick up where they left off.
I think people want their relationships back. I think they want that connection and that piece. But I also think after a couple of years of taking essentially, we're very social creatures, and having us in smaller groups or isolation, I think we also have to be mindful that that's going to take time. Like there's a reentry period. And, if we try too fast, too much, it's going to be very overwhelming to our senses and whatnot. So I think it's, we've just got to recognize that, a lot of people have been through a lot of trauma too, and that takes time to work through. And again, it kind of comes back to that psychology piece of like, we really need to understand people and do this, in the most effective way, because that will, if you do that right, the business results will follow, and I mean, the other thing that I've been kind of thinking about related to this and what colleges can do about that is, because there's been some conversations like, well, do you really need a higher ed experience if everything is just like skills based and you can go get these MOOCs or go online and get these skills. Right. And I think now more than ever, the social element of college becomes a really key experience piece that is good for students to get. And, whether it's in a 4-year university traditional campus or a community college, one thing I would encourage educators to do is start working with your student life offices, figuring out some of those clubs, and even having your students, whether it's an extra credit or required assignment, have them join a club, because I think that might be a good way to get some of that reentry and build some of those connection and social skills, and combine it with the classroom experience.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because I do find too, at least the community college, which I'm most familiar with, is that students tend to stay more engaged and stay in class when they are involved with a club, because I feel that connection, and that was going on before COVID. I think even now it is even more important of having a connection with people who have similar interests, whether it's educational or some other type of club. So I think you're so right about that. That's such a great point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, we just now need to get really kind of targeted on what are the people that we're here to serve, what are their needs, and then how do we adapt? I think that's the other big word: adaptability, flexibility, agility. They kind of all fit together on, okay, this is how we're going to get to this next, deal with this next period of time. And as educators, that's where we have can have a lot of influence and establish some opportunities for our students. And I just think that's kind of the mission for right now. And I would say, I don't want to predict anything out beyond 6 months, because you just don't know what's going to be around the corner. But I'd say if I was planning, for the next year, that would be some things I'd be looking at, is like, yeah, we need to deliver content. We need to do that, but we just need to help folks kind of get reacclimated and start to focus on the skills that they, maybe some of them missed through high school or through just being alone for the last couple of years, and really focus on those as well.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on with that. I think it is a process. One thing that's really interesting is a lot of my students, I have them take like the free version of the Myers-Briggs test. And I think it's always kind of an interesting thing, just kind of, get more in touch with yourself, seeing if maybe with what you're interested in, you're on the right track as far as a career, or if there's something you haven't considered. It's definitely not, the answer to all your questions, but I think sometimes it's kind of a good start. And I take that test periodically myself. And I've always shown up very much an extrovert. Well, I noticed taking it during, like, I think the last time I took it was about 6 months ago, and I showed much more being introvert, but because I was forced to be introvert. And so I thought that was very fascinating. I was still on more towards the extroverted, but I was more center of the line, which I've never been there before. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's an actual name for that, and they call it ambivert. And so, on the one side of the scale, you've got the introversion and then the extroversion. But most people are actually what we call ambiverts, where they can kind of flex up and down based on the situation and the context to be more introverted or be more extroverted. But I would agree that I think some of, you get into these habits. Habits are not good or bad. They just are. And that's, if your habit was, okay, I went to work every day for a period of time and I engaged with colleagues and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden you were in your home office or, wherever that was, that's going to change your habits and routines. And then again, it's going to take a new period of time to reset those. So, yeah, I used, with my upper division students in our leadership class, we used the Gallup Strengths Finder, and I found that to be very valuable for them too, to kind of help students understand, what are some of the areas where they have maybe some natural talent, ability, interest, and then build those skills around some of those strengths. And I think coming out of kind of where we're at, helping folks, figure some of that stuff out can be a good guidepost for them as they get going.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I think we've all changed a lot, and now it's kind of like getting back to center. I came from the insurance world and, sometimes dealing with like a lot of trauma with people, different events that happen in their life, and it shifts you. And I always have that conversation with them. It's like, now you got to find your new center, whether it was a car accident or somebody passed away or you had a fire. Now you're a different person. And well, this was like to the extreme going through what we just went through. And you're right. It's like we all have to kind of recenter and figure out what our strengths are now, because they're probably different than what they were a couple of years ago. So yeah, and that can be good things. There's a lot of opportunity that comes from that. And as we were just talking about before the show started, is like we've just been working on our entrepreneurship content in Cadex Master, refreshing that. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do that first was because what we see in the research typically is after you come out of an event like this, like the Great Recession, or in this case, the pandemic, as we continue to move through that, is a lot of new businesses and people start to take a lot of opportunities. And so I wanted to make sure that we had, some recent, relevant, refresh content that could help. I have a feeling that some of our audience, some of the students that you'll be having and I'll be having, are going to want to know more about that. And I wanted that to be kind of one of the first things that we worked on in our next update. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much, Tim, for joining us. Tim works with McGraw-Hill and Microsoft, and your insights were just incredible. So thank you so much for your time. This is Mary Stucco with Education Unfiltered. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day.